is the secret of communicating assertively? You're challenged to effectively balance empathy, high-quality listening, and direct communication, which can all be pretty tricky. You need to clearly communicate your needs while being mindful of the other person. So my fellow LinkedIn instructor and entrepreneur, Kim Kaup, is someone who communicates with kindness, respect, and candor in every sticky situation. She joined me on my Stronger live show this month to share great insights on navigating direct communication while being diplomatic and not burning bridges along the way. So here are some tips for communicating with clients. That's a good first step. Manage unrealistic expectations. As the founder of a marketing agency, Kim works with A-list celebrities like Paul McCartney, Oprah, and others. So she has plenty of practice communicating with tact while being direct and honest. She shared with me an experience when the representative of a well-known artist label had asked if her team would help pick up the ball when another agency had fallen through. The client asked for a deadline that was completely unrealistic, and Kim tactfully communicated that they would have to move the deadline back for her to take on the project. When they refused, she stood her ground and let them know that she would not be able to do this. They would have to find a different agency. The truth was that the project could not be completed by the date, regardless of what the competitor said. So sure enough, the project was not completed on the time by the other agency. So losing that business was better than losing her reputation by promising something she couldn't follow through with. Stand your ground and share your honest opinion with clients, even though it might not be a proper one. Take the emotion out. When it comes to being direct and the news is difficult, I'm a big fan of the Center of Creative Leadership's SBI model. It takes the emotion out and it focuses you on the task at hand. Here's an example of an experience I had with a client. Here was the situation. I was preparing a presentation, and after a planning call with the managers of the client, I began receiving multiple emails from the team regarding what and how I was planning to deliver. I told the human resources rep, listen, during the last client meeting, we tried to meet the needs of several company managers. Behavior. 1 or 2 clarifications is certainly acceptable, but I was receiving multiple emails every day asking what I was doing and what I needed to do step-by-step checks, and I followed by saying, I've received several emails with additional information for each slide. That was the behavior. Finally, the impact. Answering emails was taking away the time I needed to prepare properly and was making me feel micromanaged. The presentation was suffering, and it felt like the team was not trusting me. I closed my communication with the rep by saying, in our initial meeting, I took time to be sure I understood the learning objectives. If I spent time communicating about each slide, the final outcome will not be what your team hired me to do. I laid out this framework and then was sure to address the power imbalances. See, indeed, they were the paying client, but I'm an expert and in my field with experience in front of large groups. Without emotion, I communicated that the email threads were overwhelming and that they needed to trust me. Such directness may have been somewhat awkward, but moving forward, I was able to focus on the actual presentation. Ultimately, the client was happy with the results. Think of an upcoming communication with a client or even a supervisor and try that situation, behavior, impact model and put it into practice. Now, tips for communicating with your team assertively. Power dynamics on a team are typically dispersed, but everyone works towards a common goal. If you're the team's leader, be aware of when you need to be particularly clear and direct. Assign work responsibility. One common mistake, Kim told me, was that during our conversations was emails that went like this, Dear all, or Dear team. By doing this, it almost absolves everyone of responsibility. Instead, try directing your communication to one person on the team and adding a note like this. You may not be the right person to ask. If that's the case, please reply and let me know who I should talk to. Acknowledge quieter team members. Kim and I both recently read Jessica Chen's book, Smart, Not Loud, and we both loved how she highlighted that the loudest person in the room is often not the only one with insights. So as a leader, it's important to acknowledge those who are less likely to speak up in a large meeting. A simple, "Do you have any thoughts on this?" that can flood the room with a perspective you may otherwise have missed. Now, disagreeing in a meeting. I loved Kim's new take on no being a complete sentence. If you haven't heard that statement before, the idea is that saying no is enough and you don't need to explain yourself. Like Kim, I've also felt like it's a bit awkward, especially at work, when you just say no like that. But Kim suggested the option that saying "I disagree" followed by a healthy pause. Anyone that wants to know more can ask why. And if they don't care to hear your opinion, then you know you voiced your concerns. Now, additional assertiveness tips for you. Practice in low-stakes settings. Kim used restaurants as a place to practice. If you ordered sweet potato fries and the waiter brings you regular fries, then ask them to change it. You often default to, "Oh, I don't want to rock the boat," or "I'd hate to inconvenience someone." But this is a great place to stand your ground and practice communicating kindly and assertively. Pay attention to your channels. Written communication makes empathy harder to relay, but face-to-face communication makes you less comfortable with being direct. So decide what the situation calls for, and if you want to create a dialogue or a monologue, you decide. In a recent call-out to a colleague who I felt was not treating me with integrity, I chose to send them an email. It allowed them to receive the message, but I fully realized that it didn't give them a chance to share their perspective. And as a result, they never spoke of my email, and that collaboration has ended. Finally, be an ally. Support those who may struggle with assertive communication. Step up when you see someone get interrupted, or even coach a colleague after a meeting where you've noticed that they should have been more assertive. Use new technology. I love the tool called Udily.ai, which helps assess communication skills. If I'm not using assertive wording, or if I'm communicating too directly, this tool helps me realign. You can turn it on and have it follow you while you speak in meetings to help you make improvements. As Brené Brown points out, clear communication is kind communication. Assertive communication can include making you a stronger leader and a role model for your team. I'm hopeful that these tips will help you communicate with tact and authority in situations that call for it. I would love to hear what situations you've experienced at work that called for assertive communication. As always, I appreciate you reading Stronger, my newsletter, and please follow me on LinkedIn and be sure to send this newsletter to a friend if you think that they would benefit.